This is Basketball by Association. My name is Arky. Shea. That is Mr. Joel C. Cortez. Joel, let me tell you something about the basketball. I don't know if you knew this. Lots of people think the round ball is kind of fun. I'm one of them. But some of them want to sort of distract from the biggest story in basketball by talking about how hot the Milwaukee Bucks are. And I get it. They've won like 16 straight games. That's a lot.
With Giannis and without Giannis, which is impressive.
Yeah, and that's fine. He's out there buying Nashville soccer teams. That's good. Here's the thing that's important. The New York Knicks are white hot too. The New York Knicks are coming for that home hosting round coming up by the end of this season. They've won 7 in a row. So don't let Giannis and his off-the-court ventures distract you from the real news, which is we be balling in IC, baby.
All right, well, they're 9-1
beating the Celtics along the way. Come on, this ain't nothing, man.
They're 9-1 in their last 10. We will give them that. They're looking better.
They are 10-2 since February 1. How about that, huh?
Yeah, and you and I have, more impressively, not so much you, more impressively me, I have been very respectful to the Knicks all season long. It's the first time in a while where I've been this respectful to them, and I like their roster. I like the group. I don't know that they're in the top 4 as far as like the elite goes, but I think they're very capable of at least winning a playoff round and making a series of it in the semifinals, and that in and of itself is a major step forward on where they have been over the last couple of years. And you never know what happens. A team gets hot like the Knicks, and they win a semifinals round that maybe they weren't supposed to, and you make it to the Eastern Conference Finals and you take your shot. Like, stranger things have happened. Before we go any further on that, however, it's time to name the episode. And speaking of the Knicks, let's be as disrespectful to the Knicks as possible with this choice, because it's someone that Knicks fans do not like. Do not like.
I have a bunch of them, to be fair with
you. Yes. It's not a former Knicks player, so it's not a self-hatred type of thing, because there's many of those Knicks guys. It's episode 137. There's only one player in NBA history who's ever logged 137 career playoff games. So this is not me being salty or snarky and trying to twist the knife on you. It's just the guy we got by default, and he's a one-time All-Star. Which surprised me because I didn't even think that he would be an All-Star, but he got into the All-Star game averaging 10 points and 9.9 rebounds per game and 1.3 blocks. What the hell was wrong with the All-Star game in 1999-2000 that qualified someone as an All-Star? Nonetheless, this guy was a very solid career starter throughout a long, productive time. I can't really name off a whole bunch of like plaudits of, oh, he got this award and that award, because he just didn't get any other awards besides the one-time All-Star. That's literally it. So you know it's not Reggie Miller, but it is one of Reggie Miller's teammates from that era of when the Knicks and the Pacers were not exactly on speaking terms. And when they did speak, it had to be bleeped out.
Man, I'm not getting anywhere closer.
His career high was 11.7 points per game and 10.9 rebounds per game. That was in 93-94.
Okay.
So you know it's not Rick Smits because he scored more points than that. Maybe this will narrow it down. Played for the Pacers for 8 seasons.
Okay.
Then went to the Blazers, did 3.5 seasons there. After that, bounced around for a while. Golden State, Indiana, did a couple years in Detroit, but unfortunately he got to Detroit 1 year too late and missed out on a championship. He did get to go to the finals the following year where they were beat by the Spurs.
Can you give me a position? I think I might have 1 or 2 guesses. Give me a position.
Well, knowing that he averaged 10 rebounds a couple of times per game or was close to it, it's a big man.
Well, I was wondering if we're going to go forward or center, and
he could play either.
Yeah,
and did play either, and it ain't Rick Smits.
It's not Rick Smits. The only guy I could think of late 90s, early 2000s, that kind of...
He's a Clemson guy. born in Georgia.
I'm not gonna remember where
He had
Dale Davis?
It's Dale Davis, yeah.
No, it is. Is it Dale Davis, really? Dale Davis was an all-star?
Dale Davis was somehow an all-star in
Okay.
99-2000 at age 30, averaging 10 points, 10 boards, and a block per game. He made the all-star game. Today we talk about people like getting snubbed when they're averaging 20 and 10. My goodness. Like, I understand that was the lockout season and it was weird, but there's no excuse for that. And this is not disrespecting Dale Davis. Like, there was a lot of good players in the league around that time, and Dale Davis was.
Hold on, I'm gonna find that all-star roster real quick. You can keep talking. Like, it
like,
not have been good.
I don't want to disrespect, because there is. He was an unsung guy. He was a literal dirty work, roll up your sleeves, blue collar type of player that was big in the 90s, that was big in the 80s. Like a Rick Mahorn, guys like that, where they just came in, they solidified your defense, they could rebound, they could knock somebody to the floor. I mean, Dale and Antonio Davis, that was their job. That was the one job in Indiana, was you got to stand up to the Knicks front line. You got to be able to knock Jordan on his butt. You got to be able to play against the Pistons, who were still somewhat of a threat in the early 90s. Like,
okay, so I've got this. It's the 2000 All-Star game in Oakland. And wow, this is just wow. Okay.
It's a murderer's row, isn't it?
So the MVPs were Tim Duncan and Shaq. The West won that game 137-126. Back when you had to score a little, I guess, not a ton, to be able to win that thing. Okay, so here's your starters for the East. Allen Iverson. He was the third leading vote getter. The second leading vote getter was Alonzo Mourning.
Okay.
And the top vote getter was Vince Carter.
I was going to say Vince has to be in there.
Yeah, and in fact, all three of those were the three most voted players in the entire year. For that game. Then the other two starters were Grant Hill and Eddie Jones.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, I knew Eddie Jones had a couple All-Stars under his belt. I did not remember that he had ever started any of them. But people forget, like, that was a guy averaging not just 20 points per game, but like 25 per game a couple of times in his career.
Well, he had 10 points in this game. How's that? So then the reserves were Ray Allen, Houston, of course. I don't know how he didn't make one any year. Reggie Miller.
Okay.
That was his fifth selection. Jerry Stackhouse.
Yeah.
Dale Davis and Glenn Robinson each making their first, and Dikembe Mutombo making his sixth.
Were there that few bigs in the East at that point in 99-2000 that, like, this is ridiculous, and this just shows how bad, like, coked up Sean Kemp was coming back to the Cavs, so overweight that Sean Kemp is not making the All-Star team for the East, and Dale Davis is instead. And again, I understand, like, you would watch Davis's game and there was a lot of intangibles in there, but intangibles don't translate to all-star appearances typically. So it is what it is. We've spent so much time on Double D now.
Your Rising Stars challenge is when we talk about big men in the East. Elton Brand, Todd McCulloch.
Do we got an Eddie Curry sighting in there yet? Him and Tyson Chandler aren't there yet. They're like a year away, I think.
Yeah, we got a Rafe LaFrance. Well, he's in Denver, so that's different.
Yep.
And also in the West, we got Michael Olowokandi.
Oh my goodness!
We've
Man, did the league not want him to suck?
Okay, so that, I guess, not the banner year for the NBA that we might have been able to hope.
No, the lockout was a weird year.
All right, fair enough. The Dale Davis episode, I guess. All right. Let's get to some of these news and notes real quick. Besides the Knicks being super good, I gotta say that I feel like there is a BBA curse going. We gave a lot of love to LeBron James for his longevity, right? And he has had some injuries before, but for the most part, he was doing really good throughout his career.
Yeah.
I feel like immediately once the game started back after we gave him sort of the love, right? He's got an injury where he's down for at least 2 more weeks before he will be reevaluated.
Yeah.
And the story is that it's going to be more than 2 more weeks that probably after that because he doesn't seem close to be coming back. And they're going to reevaluate because who knows where the Lakers will be at that point. And by the way, this off the heels of, Anthony Davis, who's a fragile little thing himself, not playing on the second night of a back-to-back last night as we're recording this. So, it's hard to have a lot of confidence in the Lakers now, right?
I got a buddy of mine who is from LA originally and not from the hoity-toity flashy part of LA. He's from streets of LA. He is a diehard Lakers fan. He is a true, real Lakers fan. And he and I got a chance to talk the other day. We were having lunch and he said, Joel, LeBron ain't coming back. He's not, he might play another season or two, but he's not playing the rest of this year. It's indefinite at this stage of the year. LeBron's already done this to us once where he could have come back kind of sort of and chose not to play through the play-in round. And he's taking care of his body. That makes sense. But this is the type of injury, there's just not enough time. And we both kind of lamented the fact that yes, LA, it was highway robbery to trade Russell Westbrook and get 3 different starting caliber players from a playoff team from last year for next to nothing. Even he admits that. He can't understand how they pulled that off. They're not world beaters, D'Angelo Russell, Malik Beasley, and Jared Vanderbilt, but it is a huge seismic shift for that roster from what it was to get a high motor guy like Vanderbilt. Beasley's another high motor guy who can knock down shots, and D'Angelo Russell as an irrational confidence guy who will not be overshadowed. The moment's not going to overshadow him playing in LA. He's going to still jack the same shots that he always jacks. He's going to make enough of them to make you believe. And he's a phenomenal pocket passer. Like him and Anthony Davis, they're going to look really good together, and they have already. And so we were both lamenting the fact that right when the Lakers, who I will give them this, they have been competitive and they've been fighting all year long to stay where they've been at. This has not been a type of disaster season like last year where you had the old guys who just couldn't hack it and the team gave up after a while. The Lakers have fought and they finally get some reinforcements, and then LeBron goes down and we're and even if LeBron somehow magically comes back, it is now Murphy's Law written in stone that the game that LeBron comes back this season will be the game that Anthony Davis goes down for 4 weeks. It's just, it's been in the card. So I don't feel bad for the Lakers because they have so many things that have gone their way and they've gotten lucky so many times in their history, including this season with the Russell Westbrook trade. But I don't feel good for them either. I don't love this. I'm not rejoicing over their demise.
I'll tell you this. I think a lot of people sort of just get mad at the Lakers because everyone talks about them, including the show all the time. Now, this show probably does better than most as far as
we try to steer
ignoring them because they're just the Lakers. But this is a major story for them. And because we had some confidence, you more so than me, that they might be able to sort of string something together. I mean, still now they're only a game out of the play-in, right? There's still a chance for them to, be in the postseason as far as how much damage can you do when and if LeBron is able to be, because that's a big piece of this puzzle. This is the biggest piece.
Second biggest piece. I think it's the second biggest.
What's the first biggest?
It's Anthony Davis.
Anthony Davis can't get on the court, man.
Well, but that's the thing, and that's what holds them back is because he hasn't been on the court.
Well, I mean, I think LeBron's bigger just because you've been able to count on that more and been able to fight with that more. Anthony Davis is a bonus if you get him at this point, right? Anyway, so I didn't want to belabor that point. I just wanted to say that the BBA curse is officially on. So
sorry, not sorry, Lakers fans.
I also want to talk about the debut of one Mr. Kevin Durant in Phoenix. He has 23 points in 27 minutes. Devin Booker has a bang-out game, goes for, I think, a 35, 36 or something in that game.
37.
37.
You're climbing up there. Yeah, 37, 7 and 6.
I didn't mean to shortchange him. Devin Booker talked about how he would sort of look out there at Kevin Durant being on the court with him and say it didn't sort of feel real to him. And I sort of feel the same way. That doesn't feel like a real thing. But this is sort of the beginning of what we think might be Phoenix's best shot at this whole thing.
before I get to the Durant stuff, I want to just throw out a couple of odd notables from that game. Number one, Phoenix, you win. That's great, but you beat the Charlotte Hornets, who don't have LaMelo Ball and don't have a lot of their other pieces. So congratulations, I guess. And you talk about it being a surreal game. Not only was it weird to see Kevin Durant in a Suns uniform, but it was an alternate Suns uniform, so it wasn't even the normal stuff. And then the Charlotte Hornets, this is the first time I've seen this all year, which shows you how little I've watched the Hornets for good reason. They're on their alternate they're on their alternate floor in their alternate jerseys. I like the color scheme of like the gold and black, though that's been done so many times by other teams. And Charlotte's alternate floor looks exactly like what the OKC Thunder trotted out about 10 years ago. Like, it's blatant plagiarism.
Okay.
And then they're wearing a jersey trying to be all hip and cool, like these other teams that trot out the 3-letter city jerseys. Yeah. But for Charlotte, they abbreviated it CLT. And every time I watched it, my mind is going, it sounds like you're saying a part of the female anatomy. And every time I see it, I can't take it seriously. It was a weird game.
I can't believe they ever did that. Like, this is not the first time they do it, but like you sort of look at it and you're like, no, come on, man.
I showed that to my wife and she's like, wait, that's for real? No one thought to stop them from that?
I'm sorry. Do you not travel to Charlotte's airport often? They love that. I don't know if they love that. It's weird. Yeah, it's super
Charlotte's
weird.
always been abbreviated CHA in the NBA. Like, there's no reason to try to switch that up right now. Like,
listen, trying to sell jerseys, bro.
City. Just go Buzz City. Like, I don't know. But anyway, to Kevin Durant. It was a good, solid first game. He kept it fairly simple.
Yeah, like 23 and 27. That's in 27. Like, that's pretty good, right?
It was, and he was able to get to his spots. Yeah. But again, you're playing a Charlotte Hornets team that's walking wounded at this point. They're roadkill. Like,
God, talk about another franchise. You're like, man, they just can't ever get it together.
Yeah,
like something's just always going wrong for them.
So It was a good warm-up type of game to go against a team like that where you're almost in practice mode. How am I going to fit with everybody? I'm going to get to my spots. I'm going to knock things down. But it is not a playoff-like atmosphere. They're not coming after us all that hard. So what we saw was good. And I don't want to take away from that. There's a lot more work and a lot more testing to be done when they get up against, the tough upper echelon teams. But I think Kevin Durant's role here in Phoenix is going to be a lot different than it was in Brooklyn. In Brooklyn, he was the number one on a team that, outside of when they had James Harden for 5 minutes, and Harden was really a shell of himself anyway, they did not have another guy on that team who could carry you. Like, Kyrie Irving is elite at certain portions of the game. But he's not a number one. He's proven that many, many times. He's not necessarily a winning player unless he's in a winning system. And Durant, we know, had to bear an inordinate amount of the burden in Brooklyn because guys were hurt or sitting themselves out. You had a supporting cast that was okay, but there was a lot of flux in that too. Now coming to Phoenix, Kevin Durant gets to do what he did in Golden State. He gets to be so good that the defense has to account for him at all times, but they can't possibly double team and build the entire defensive game plan around him because Devin Booker is that good also on the offensive end. And the Suns still have one of the all-time elite delivery systems in Chris Paul. And they have a guy who is an above-average finisher from multiple levels in DeAndre Ayton. So Durant does not have to be the number one alpha guy all the time, but he will when called upon on nights that Booker needs the help or whatever. And it's going to open up, which we saw last night for Devin Booker, 15 of 26 for 37 points. It's going to open up Book so much because now the defense cannot tee off on him either. And it creates an elite type of balance. I know there's going to be major question marks with this team about what does this do to the supplementary scores? Their numbers are going to go way down. I'm not real worried about that. The only worry I have about these Phoenix Suns, without Mikal Bridges, are they tough enough? Are they hard-nosed enough when they get into a slugfest type of series? I think specifically with the Memphis Grizzlies, is a type of team where they're going to punch you, shove you, kick you, push you, do all this stuff and uglify the game. Are the Suns built to beat that sort of thing? But I like the Suns' chances against a lot of the other Western teams that are very talent heavy. You know, you look at Denver, for example, Golden State, Dallas. I like Phoenix's chance against any of those. Sacramento just probably doesn't have enough experience yet. The only other team where I could see this being an issue would be the Clippers. Like, the Clippers have enough wing players, including elite wings. You can match up Paul George and Kawhi Leonard on Kevin Durant and Devin Booker pretty nicely and go, all right, let's have everybody else figure out the rest of this series, because it ain't going to be Durant and it ain't going to be Booker. You know, so I like where this is going for Phoenix. They're already up into the 4th seed. They probably, I think, can surpass Sacramento by the end of the season and get up into the 3rd place, which is a coup for Phoenix given how far they had fallen off just a couple of weeks ago. But they're not invincible with Kevin Durant. There is a template to maybe beat this team.
Yeah, I think so. Sure. I mean, but again, when it will all, as the league also often is, it is going to be so matchup oriented, right? Which one of these teams does Phoenix get punched up against first, and then secondly afterwards? And you know, I don't disagree with your assessment on who they may struggle with at this point, but I've also seen one game with Kevin Durant and Devin Booker and company, so I think they got like 18 or 19 games left to sort of, you know, figure out some of those and then start to figure out the matchups. So I don't have much of a problem. You know who does have a problem? The Dallas Mavericks. They have a problem because when on the floor at the same time, Luka and Kyrie, no bueno. As far as at least winning with the game on the line, close games. I think they're 1 and 4 together on the court at the same time.
Yeah, and they've all been very close
finishes. Games that you could make an argument both ways, Joel, that they're sort of figuring things out. They're two sort of alphas trying to figure out which one's going to be the alpha at the end, so on and so forth. So let me ask you, Joel, do you think this is a bad pairing? Do you think this just one of those rolls of the dice where, unfortunately, they've been on the losing side of some of these close games early in these in this relationship, or is this a sign of things to come?
I think it's an imperfect pairing, and it was from the start. But Dallas often chases big stars, rarely gets them. They got Kyrie for a fairly nice price, even though it's risky because Kyrie is an expiring contract. But Dallas is probably going to have a lot of leverage because there's going to be a lot of teams that just won't even talk to Kyrie in free agency at this point. So I get how and why they rolled the dice on him. There is absolutely, I think, the caveat of they're still figuring it out. So we have to give a little bit of grace here. But the solution to this problem to me is relatively easy. And this is a Jason Kidd and a Luka Doncic issue, not a Kyrie issue. As I've watched a couple of those games down the stretch, Luka defers to Kyrie. Kyrie defers back to Luka. They're both trying to be good teammates. Neither of them is being selfish. They're seeing the other guy in a position to score and going, you're more open than I am. Go do this. No. Luka Doncic, this is your team. You're the MVP candidate. Jason Kidd, you're the head coach. The ball goes through Luka at the end of the game, just like it has before, full stop. Kyrie can be a shot maker down the stretch just like any other guy, but you do not have to run stuff for him at the end of that game. Run it through Luka. Luka will find Kyrie, who is an excellent jump shooter, an underrated cutter at times too. Kyrie will put himself in a position to be available. Right now, through a couple of those games, Kyrie was kind of standing around waiting for something to happen because he probably doesn't know the play. Luka, though, was also standing around waiting for something to happen. Luka definitely knows the play. So it's simplification time. It's kind of like when the Minnesota Timberwolves got Rudy Gobert at the beginning of the season, and they were trying so hard to integrate him offensively. They were running stuff in the first quarter for him all the time, and it just put everybody off balance. And it wasn't until they backed away from that and went, Screw it. Rudy Gobert doesn't need plays run for him. We don't need to integrate him. He just needs to rebound and block shots and set screens and roll to the basket and do Rudy Gobert stuff. This is Anthony Edwards' team. We're going to run everything through Edwards, and D'Angelo Russell will get the ball sometimes, and Gobert will get his shots where he gets his shots. And once they made that change, everybody else got much more comfortable. And I think right now there just is this idea of trying to get Kyrie comfortable, but the way to do that is going to be to let Luka be Luka and win games.
Yeah, we may have a different story if we had also had these two on the court at the same time ever since Kyrie got to Dallas, but we didn't get that because of the injury early on when Kyrie
That's very true. That's
got
very
to Dallas.
true.
So we could have I can't remember how many games it was. It could be, we have a 4-4 situation or a 5-4 situation or something like that, where it looks a little bit different. And listen, they're only 2 games out of a home playoff series to start the 2023 playoff slate. So, things aren't miserable right now, but you do have one of those teams that ahead of you would be like a Phoenix, for example, and they feel like they know exactly what they got. They just got to start figuring out the rust off of everybody and get the flow together. Kyrie and Luke have had a little bit more time together. I would have liked to see this look a little better early. Some people are negative Nancy's on Kyrie, say he's going to be a guy that sort of blows up the culture. And maybe that happens.
You can see where they're coming from on that point, right?
Yeah,
you can see where people are coming from.
There's a little history there. But I don't think there's enough history in Dallas to say that that's anywhere near the case. I think that's a great assessment by you, is that these are 2 guys that are going out of their way to sort of not be the super selfish guy, and also recognize the other teammates' ability to be able to do well what they've done so well wherever they are. So it's Luke obviously in Dallas all the time, and Kyrie wherever he's been throughout his career. So both players are trying to say, look, I know you can do this. I want you to be a part of the team. I'm cool with it. Here's the ball. When it should sort of be like, hey, Luka, in this situation, ball should be yours. Let's find a way to get the ball to you at this point.
One of these players is an MVP candidate and the other is not. And not just an MVP candidate, an MVP front runner. Like, that should just solve the issue right there. And so when Jason Kidd is like, we need to mature and close out these games and we need to grow up, I'm kind of pointing the finger back at Jason Kidd going, you're the coach.
Yeah. Get on that, Luka.
Solve it.
Tell that guy to be the alpha dog a little bit more. So this is his team. He's been there long enough to be able to say that. Everyone knows whose jocks there is bigger than everybody else at this point. He's earned it. So just go to him. And I don't know if you have to. I don't think Kyrie has to go to him and say, hey, man, should I be deferring to you? Like, Luka just say, hey, man, this is my town. All right. I want you here. We're going to play here. We're going to play great together. But in those kind of moments, we're going to do everything to find me the ball. So give me the ball. So until that doesn't work, then I think it's sort of unfair to sort of judge where Dallas is at this point.
But the beautiful thing is, if and when Luka does that and really doubles down on, I'm going to hog the ball because I'm setting people up. I'm not deferring. I am setting people up. When he does that, Kyrie's going to be more open and more available.
Yeah.
And then if he misses a shot, it's no different than if Tim Hardaway Jr. or Reggie Bullock or any of the other Mavericks misses a 3. Okay, it happens, but you got a good look. It was within the flow of things. It wasn't forced, and you let the ball bounce where it was going to bounce. Hopefully Luka is taking more of those shots himself, but you understand that as a distributor and as a team player, like a LeBron James, like a Nikola Jokic, he's going to try to score, but if he sees somebody so wide open, he's going to pass them the ball because it's the right thing to do, and they're going to live and die with that shot. You can feel fine about that if Kyrie makes or misses it when it was a good look. What you can't feel good about is some of these end game situations where it's kind of been a hot potato type of thing, and they just don't look comfortable as far as the shot they're going to take.
Is there anybody or anything you want to mention before we definitely get in on this time? Because I do want to just mention briefly Milwaukee, if you don't mind.
I just want to touch on Quin Snyder being hired by the Atlanta Hawks after Nate McMillan was fired.
So let's get to Quin Snyder. Quin Snyder, veteran coach, is now in for the now removed Nate McMillan. Okay, let me just give it to you. Give me a couple of thoughts on it. Like, do you think this is a good enough fit for Atlanta? Clearly, a change had to be made. Like, the locker room was lost with McMillan, and that's fine. Do you think Quin Snyder's the type of guy that can sort of wrangle these kids, so to speak, and get the focus in the right direction?
Quin Snyder had a brand in Utah, and it was, we're going to run a system. It's going to be very egalitarian. The ball's going to move. We are going to defend. We're going to be a tough team, a professional team, a consistent team every single night. You can make whatever accusations you want about the fact that Utah did not have long-term playoff success there, whether you want to point the finger at the fact that Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert, maybe not a true elite number 1 and 2 punch, or whether you want to point some of the finger at Quin Snyder to go, maybe you were a little too system heavy, but I thought he played with what he had and did a phenomenal job with it. Atlanta could use some of that. Like Nate McMillan did a good job of rallying the troops. He's been a 500 coach everywhere else in his career, including Seattle and Portland, and I think there's one other stop in there, Indiana. Not a lot of playoff success for Nate McMillan. Never really had like a brand or something that he hung his hat on, like, this is what my teams will be. It was always just, oh, Nate McMillan's teams defend pretty well, and they kind of struggle a little bit offensively, and they're good enough to make the playoffs. So I do think this is a step forward. The major question mark to me is, you've had a lot of players, I don't want to say inmates running the asylum because that's too strong, but you've kind of had a loosey-goosey atmosphere in Atlanta for a long time, from the sounds of it, a very player-driven atmosphere. Are the players currently there, especially the stars like Trae Young, John Collins? I worry less about DeJounte Murray. He's coming from San Antonio where he was used to that kind of thing. Are the players going to buy in and follow along with Quin Snyder? Or is this going to be one of those where square peg, round hole, and the GM's got to make some tough choices about, do I move players and bring in guys that are going to be amenable to this? Or otherwise this 5-year contract for Quin Snyder is going to look really silly really fast. I think the players will fall in line. I think this is going to be a work in progress, but it is a step forward. And look, Atlanta's got more talent right now on this roster than Utah ever did. So if Quin Snyder,
there's no reason they should be fighting where they are right now. Like, it really is no reason.
If Quin Snyder can tighten this group up and get them to be more consistent and professional and find those roles for everybody, there's a chance that Atlanta can meet the potential that we saw from them a couple seasons ago that had us all drooling about the Hawks as the next top 3 team in the East.
All right, if you don't mind, we'll wrap up with the Bucks. I watched Milwaukee and Miami Friday night, and the thing that was the first Kevin Love game back with the Miami Heat. He got in about halfway in of that game, no points. Congratulations, you got to where there's at least not snow, so that's good. Which is my favorite theory on this, and I think it's the right theory.
Cash on the checks and flip flops, baby.
The thing that I noticed the most about that game, besides the fact that game looked like they were going to score 300 total points early in that game, turns out that would be the Sacramento game later that night that would do that.
Which I watched, by the way. That and the Kings and the Clippers game, phenomenal fun. It was so ridiculous.
It was. People are always bad mouthing NBA. Like, you always get that stuff. It's like, you know why that was like the second highest scored ever? Like, it's because you don't always get that.
Right. And it was double overtime.
But whatever, right? People, whatever reason you want to hate something, you can find to hate it if you just want to nitpick.
Absolutely.
But I was watching a lot of Milwaukee, and I was watching like Jay Crowder get in and get a standing ovation and stuff like that. I was watching Giannis and Middleton and Bobby Portis, and I was watching all of this sort of beautiful ballet of basketball happening. And I really, for the first time in that game, sort of started thinking, okay, Milwaukee's going to be really hard to beat. Like, Milwaukee's got just about everything that you're going to want for a championship, not only contender, but real, actual horse for it. I don't know who out of the East can sort of really match up with them if they play at the level that they were playing at that time, that night when I was watching them, or as they've been playing throughout this streak. I don't know of a lot of teams in the East or West that are good matchups with Milwaukee. Milwaukee is really, really good. Like, this is an all 99 level team. If you play on 2K, they're really good.
The knock against the Bucks over the last few years was Giannis is really good, Middleton is pretty good, Drew Holiday's pretty good, Brook Lopez is helpful, but man, that bench and the supporting cast outside of Bobby Portis, and sometimes you get a Pat Connaughton sighting, sometimes you get a Grayson Allen sighting. It's a little bit old. It doesn't really punch above its weight. If Giannis is really struggling, who is there to help? And now you look up and down the roster and you go, Javon Carter's got a role. He's played starters minutes there before he moves to the bench. Joe Ingles coming back from injury, but you can trust Joe Ingles to come in and do the right thing. Same thing with Jay Crowder. They're bringing Chris Middleton off the bench, which I love. I know that they're trying to bring Middleton back to full health, and so they can monitor his minutes this way, but to split him and Giannis up and then still put them in at crunch time, love that idea bunches. They're a deep team now. So you've got a perennial MVP with some clear-cut number twos behind him, and they're deep. And that's why when I look at the Bucks, I don't have any worries about their ability to win a championship. Zero at this point, outside of, Giannis has to be healthy, Middleton's got to be fully healthy. But that's the same concern you'd have for any team at any point. I look at the Boston Celtics and I go, I think Boston's starting five is still better than Milwaukee's starting five. But
yeah, maybe. But let me tell you this. Boston's still playing their starters a ton of minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Like they have, no matter how good they've been, and they've led the East for the giant chunk of this season.
Yep.
They still play, even last night. Like, they play 1,000 minutes for everybody, and they don't need to all the time. We thought last year that stretch run from January 1 through the playoffs, you thought they sort of monitored some of those minutes a little bit more effectively and closely. They really haven't. They've really sort of played essentially the same, which is to me a little worrisome when you have a Milwaukee team that is a little fresher, because you have guys coming back from injury, which it's some concern, but they're being nursed back to health, and once they're all ready to go, last couple of weeks of the season, especially into the playoffs, like, I don't know, I worry about for season-long legs.
I do think Boston is as deep as Milwaukee. When I look at their roster, deep, Derek White and Malcolm Brogdon could be starters. Peyton Pritchard, Grant Williams, you can trust them with minutes. Sam Hauser has carved out a role for himself there. Mike Muscala's played in some big games before as a shooter. They've got other guys in the mix, like Blake Griffin's played in big games before too. So I think Boston and Milwaukee are in a dead heat as far as the quality of their rosters. It's just a little bit different. Giannis is the better player than Jason Tatum. So Milwaukee has the better star, but Boston's starting five is slightly better. Otherwise, they're about even on paper. Philadelphia is still absolutely in this mix. They're going to go as far as Joel Embiid's health will carry them. And James Harden is going to need to make sure that he does not disappear in a super tough playoff series, because the Sixers are going to get it whenever they run into the Bucks or the Celtics, and they will run into at least one of those two, probably both, if you're going to make it to the Eastern Conference or to the NBA Finals. So, but Philly's really deep also. Philly, I think this is probably the deepest Sixers team of the Joel Embiid era as well.
It is, but I'll put it this way: like, I feel like the top two in the East this year are so much harder for Philadelphia to get through than what they had the opportunities to get through the last 2 years. Philadelphia is deeper and better, but man, it's going to be harder for them to get through.
100%. I do feel like those three teams are probably going to give us some all-time classic playoff series.
And the Knicks.
When and how they meet. The Knicks may be in that mix somewhere, but
you can say someday. I appreciate that.
As much as you love the Knicks, you can't with a straight face go, I would really love to see my Knicks in a dogfight with Philly for 7 games, or Milwaukee or Boston for 7 games. I'll take
Boston. Literally just beat Boston. I'll take Boston if I'm
want them in 7 games for a series.
Sweep them in 4. Don't need 7. Yeah, what are you talking about? No,
all right, you heard it here first, folks.
Well, that's if they get to the series. No, I wouldn't mind whatever the Knicks got through in the potential second round. one of those teams is at least knocked out of the race. Wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. But I don't know if that might trigger this. Philadelphia would be tough. Milwaukee would be impossible. Boston, I think they could play 6-7 games strong and probably win that.
Final thought here for me, because I know we got to go. But in the Western Conference, I look at those teams and I see the potential for some really great playoff series, but you just don't know who it's going to be. The West has been so weird all year, and some of the supposedly elite teams have been down. Denver still is at the top, but none of us are like true believers in the Nuggets until they prove otherwise. So it's going to be very matchup based. I think it's going to be unpredictable. We're going to get some fun ones there. In the Eastern Conference, you know what the really good series are going to be, and we're all crossing our fingers that we get that by the semifinals and by the Eastern Conference finals, because Cleveland's in that mix as much as New York is. Like, they're going to be a threat. They're going to be a fun team. I'm not sure how we can talk ourselves into Cleveland or New York getting past these top three, but they're going to be in the mix somewhere there in a fun series. But man, like, Milwaukee, Boston, Philly, bring it on. I don't want to fast forward through the rest of this season, but I am counting down the days till we get to watch those teams square off for a playoff
Those
series.
three teams are probably going to win a few more games, so we're probably going to see them in the postseason, so you can assure that they're in, and you can also assure the New York Knicks, who will be back in finally after a 1-year hiatus. Whatever that was. Weird. I don't even know how you have a real champion last year when they don't have the Knicks in it. Okay, whatever. Whatevs.
True product of the New York media right here.
Yeah.
Does the NBA exist?
This is how we make Dale Davis proud and agitate him, really, to be honest with you. So.
Dale Davis, this was the second career NBA accolade that you've ever got. You had an episode named after you on Basketball by Association, where if you want the video version, find us on YouTube, like, share, subscribe, ring the bell over there. If you want the audio only version, Spreaker, Spotify, iTunes, wherever you get your podcast. It's in the books. Arky Shea 137 is done.
There we go. Bye-bye, folks.